JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Wednesday, March 12th, 8:58 on this fine morning. Talk quick about the market CPI data and some of the names I'm watching. Go from there. S&P futures, they were already bouncing this morning and slightly bouncing overnight and have since added a bit to their gains. CPI data coming in cooler than expectations, so averted a disaster. I think if the CPI data was hot or much hotter than expectations, probably it's tough, right? Because then it puts the Fed in a tight spot because they can't cut rates, right? So then you're going to have the expectations of rate cuts going down, and not only that, we're in the midst of who knows what this all looks like. The U word. Everybody's talking about the R word. I'm talking about last couple of days. That's the U word is important. I think the biggest thing is uncertainty. So until we get some uncertainty, market's probably going to, regardless of data, earnings, all that, is probably going to be choppy. So the CPI data came out this morning, 2/10 versus 3/10 expectations on a month over month, and that's up from 0.5% in January, 0.5%. And then year over year, 2.8% versus 2.9% estimate. So cooler than expectations, a good sign. And also, it's like the first decline in the last 4 months. So, I mean, who knows? And Fed Chair Powell's always like, oh, we don't look at one data point. So maybe back-to-back months, we have to put eyes on the March CPI data when we get in April. And maybe that'll kind of alleviate some of the concerns. The thing is, the Fed meeting's in 7 days. So a week from today is the Fed meeting. And then there's not another Fed meeting till May. So it's like 6 weeks. So that's a large time frame for the Fed to go without a meeting. The last time we had that big a time frame was back in, I think it was July into September, and that's when they did the jumbo cut, right? The 0.5% rate cut. So in that 6 weeks, could be a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, so again, creates uncertainty. So hopefully we don't have to worry about too much uncertainty. Things start to get figured out. We already had some news yesterday afternoon with the U.S. and Canada. Maybe we can work that little tariff spat out and come to some kind of agreements that don't cause major uncertainty with the autos and all that other stuff. And then, you start looking. I keep looking at China. China's already rebounded, but it's like one of these years it was going to embark on a nice bounce. It's already up quite a bit this year, but it's like maybe this is a year. And it seems like all the attention has been pulled away from U.S. China and into the Eurozone and Ukraine and England and Canada and Mexico. So anyway, so that's that. So overall market, take a look at the SPY and you start looking, it hasn't broken under the RSI. So the relative strength index, usually 70, a reading at 70 or above is overbought, and a reading under 30 or at 30 is oversold. And we broke under 30 yesterday, 28.37 is the RSI and the SPY. You go back and look, and the last time we were under 30, and we've tested 30 a couple times, I don't even know if I have my chart here, was back in like 2022. So again, it doesn't mean 100% certainty that we bounce from oversold conditions, but certainly interesting. So just kind of watching that. I was talking about the rant yesterday afternoon, my annotations, which I have for over the years. A lot of times they play true, those support resistance lines all the way down to 552. Yesterday bounced. So if we do get some kind of reversal in this current environment, I would not rule out anything to see a reversal today into the red. I mean, I know it's great CPI data, and you say, wow, we're out of the woods. If we reverse, then you got to think it's more than CPI at play. But hopefully, you look at some of these names, we have at least a short-term bounce to alleviate some of these oversold conditions, and then maybe the market works out, whether we drop down to that 540 and below and get correction territory in the S&P, or we can chop around and then start to work our way back. I'm kind of on the flip side here. I'm probably more skewed to more downside in the coming weeks, but we'll see how things play out. But watching those areas, 563, 569 is a 50-day moving average, 200-day, on the SPY, and then 574. That's kind of overall markets. And then individual names, markets were finding weakness after the open yesterday, opened slightly in the red, melted down into the morning. Visa, which finally looked like it was showing some cracks, it's been a rock every time the market looks like it's. The market's tumbling. Visa looks like it's ready to break. It finds a bid. Sometimes it's actually closed green on some of these weekdays. It was down 2% in the morning, so I went and got some strikes on the break under its 50-day, which is at 336. It broke under 330 at 130. I was able to lock some of those calls in for nearly 100%. And then we start to bounce. And the premiums were coming out of the puts a heck of a lot faster than they went into them on the way down. So kind of disappointing. I didn't want to be in a spot where the market bounces and the premiums just get destroyed. So I locked the rest in. And then I'll revisit as a possible put hedge, because the puts look inexpensive on a risk reward basis in regards to the overall move. If we get a big drop and Visa drops 4 or 5%, the puts are going to be up a couple 100%. Where as opposed to you look at some of these other names now, the JP Morgan's, Goldman Spectacular, you try and play those. They get a big drop, you're going to be up 100% on puts, which the risk reward just doesn't jive with me. So that's Visa. And then when I was locking into Visa puts, I went and got some Arista calls, a name that's played out pretty well over the last couple of weeks. You look on a risk reward basis that if it bounces, the premiums are very inexpensive for a bounce. I don't know if it's teasing me, if the market's saying, but it's that you're crazy to get them. But I'm looking, I'm like, this name has come down substantially. It's a great company. You look at some of the other names in the semi space have started to bounce. Arista hasn't been able to bounce. So even if it just is a short-term bounce, I think it trades up back above 85. I'll look to close some of my calls out today if I get a chance to cover costs and ride the rest. Also, don't be surprised if I add some on strength. Also added the BIDU calls near the end of the day. And, I was just saying it earlier. I think this is like the early innings of a probably a 2025 bounce or continued bounce in China markets and stocks. You already have, who was that? Someone was on CNBC this morning saying that China is ahead of the US in regards to AI and things like that, which I mean, DeepSeek comes out, makes a great story, right? But I just think regardless, I've been waiting for Baidu to really start to get going. It had earnings, shook off after earnings, and now it's starting to bounce. I think if you could break 95.72, I think it's off to the races. Don't be surprised, similar to Arista Networks, if they show strength today, I might add some more calls. And also look to lock some of my calls out to cover costs when I get a chance. Caterpillar, disappointing. So showing relative strength with the market pretty much all last week, and then was showing relative strength yesterday, then finally succumbed to some pressure, and then yesterday just disappointing. It's back here at 345 here in the pre-market. It's going to need to really start to get going, but you look 359. If it gets over 359, I think it's going to explode. And it's had these multi-day rallies over the last year or so. You could spot out areas and weeks and months where it's went on rallies from $30, $40, $50 rallies in a matter of a couple sessions. So it's only a matter of time before this happens again. I think it trades over 360 this week if the market finds footing, if not higher. That's Caterpillar. And then Biogen, disappointing. It's like all the mid-cap bio names just got destroyed at the open yesterday. The Gileads, the VRTXs, the Regenerons, and the Biogens. I didn't see any news like a fund just decided, hey, we bid up these stocks over the last 5 days. Now we're gonna sell out, or maybe they're clearing some positions to cover other losses or margins or margin calls or what have you. I don't know. But disappointing. Still hopeful here. It's going to have to get back over its 50-day today at 144 and change. Hopefully it's not a continuation of sell-off. And then other names. I put a little channel in the chat room, Bounceplays. And, just because it's a bounce play doesn't mean I don't think we're out of the woods just yet. But it doesn't mean the market's not going to bounce. And some of these bounces might be violent. We might get back to 580 on the SPY and then back to 540 on the SPY in a matter of a couple weeks. And if that happens, you got to be open to both sides of the trade, right? You keep things small, but I'm looking for some possible bounce plays, especially on some of these names that have been decimated. You take a look at Roku, $105 all the way down under 70. At some point, maybe I'll look for some spec calls this week if the market looks like it at least wants to hold its ground into the weekend. The DocuSign reports earnings after close tomorrow was actually up 2% yesterday, but the premium build wasn't there, so maybe today's the day I'll look to get some calls, close some out tomorrow before the close, or all of them, to either cover costs or profits and ride the rest. And then TKO. If someone had told me about TKO, and some reason it caught me off the radar when the UFC and the WWE or whatever combined, or M&A, I didn't realize that until like last year. And it's a name I've been kicking myself ever since for not really trading or looking for opportunities to play for upside. But such a well-run business, great business minds, and it's like front and center. And, even yesterday you go on Netflix, it's the #1 TV show, and it's been like that, and it's always been a #1 rated program, WWE, and then you have the other side with the UFC, and it's just, there's just so much with that. It's like I could just see this going back to highs if the market bounces. So not only that, got added to the S&P on Friday. So normally when you have it in addition, the stock would have rallied, but it couldn't pull that on Monday. So could be a nice run up. So if there's any name that I might look to get some later dated strikes on to play for a longer term bounce, TKO could be one of them, one of my new favorites. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. If things get crazy, I'll be back on audio by noontime. If not, I'll be back on the audio by the after. Oh, last but not least is iRobot. Just despicable. That's just horrible earnings. They put a going concern, which means the possibility of filing for bankruptcy or protection. They also put strategic alternatives. They appointed a new board member. Who knows what that looks like? Their sales plummeted. Uh, so even if they do get a buyout from, or Amazon comes back at them for their assets or their IP or what have you, it's going to be substantially lower than there was. Maybe it's a $10 buyout offer. So I'll probably just keep this one off the watch list and not spend any effort or time watching this, or at least trading that one. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back at rock and roll.